Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to the This Week in Bitcoin. Today is June the 26th, 2020. Strong hand, long-term thinking. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. Unconfiscatable. I'm offended by selling. In motion. These dudes are in motion. I'm pumped to see them. They're all over the freaking world. We got Mauricio in Canada. We got Gabriel down in Chile. And Andy Hoffman is in the great state of Colorado. Welcome, everyone. It was an exciting week in This Week in Bitcoin. Remember, new show every day here, disruptmeister.com. Follow me on Twitter at TechBalt, TechBalt. The big news of the week, let's start it off with the PayPal. Everybody was talking about PayPal at the beginning of the week. Hello, my elite friends. I'm sure all of you were talking about it. And PayPal, Venmo to roll out crypto buying and selling. Okay, let's say this is actually going to happen here. Andy, what does this mean? Mass adoption, what's going on?
Well, first, I just want to thank you for having me back. The last time I was on the show was March 20th, which was right after the heart of the crash of the whole world, and things have in the world economically have frankly gotten dramatically worse. But in the world of Bitcoin, they've gotten dramatically better between the halving, the hash rate being stable. The price, and of course, just the outlook for money printing. I mean, how much money has been printed in the 3 months since I was last on this show? And now we're talking about looking at a Democratic Congress and presidency and further economic decline. So I think money printer Burr is about to, go to unprecedented levels. And as for PayPal, well, it's just one of these things where one at a time, every institution, be it a retail institution or or investing institution, is going to realize that either they believe in Bitcoin or they just realize that there's a lot of money to be made in it. And first it was Square, which is growing a lot faster than PayPal is growing, and now it's PayPal, which is a lot bigger than Square, with Venmo, which has become this app that everyone seems to use, almost like a portable bank. And one at a time, you're just going to see more and more institutions and groups realize that I just saw today, the Australian Post Office is going to offer Bitcoin ATM machines in every Australian post office, every single one. So, it's just like, if you want to fight Bitcoin, you can, but eventually everyone is going to, for game theory reasons or simple economic reasons, is going to join the party.
All right, so you believe it's actually going to happen, and when it actually does happen, okay, do you think normies, regular people, are going to see on the side buy Bitcoin and actually do it? And do you think PayPal will stress it?
Well, they'll stress it if they're making money doing it, and it's the same thing as like a Robinhood. I mean, if Robinhood could sell Hertz stock, which is bankrupt, they certainly could sell Bitcoin, which will make a lot more money in over time. And look, Robinhood is the kind of thing that young people are gravitating to. Maybe one day they'll realize that Schwab and E-Trade also have free commissions, but I don't know how many can get accounts there. But look, ultimately, it's going to be done by everyone for all different reasons. But ultimately, the big reason is money. It doesn't matter whether you believe in Bitcoin, but everyone's going to believe that there's a profit opportunity there.
And by the way, people who got excited by Andy talking about the money printer, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. All right, Gabriel, why don't we go to you? What's your take on the PayPal?
The timing's great for me. I'm working on an app right now, and I was saving the payment wallet sort of aspect of it for kind of the last step. I wanted to get all the rest of the functionality in first and then decide on what I'm going to use for the payments at the end. And then this news popped up, and I'm okay, because I really want to use crypto. I love the idea of using something friendly and inviting and simple to lure people into using crypto for the first time, And, I would love Bitcoin to play a role in that. But I kept thinking, It's got to just be in the back end. Maybe we use our own in-house points or something to represent the value up front, and then just slip them Bitcoin when they cash out or something like that. But then now that PayPal's getting in the game, we can use that logo to kind of help sell it. It's like this little familiar imagery that, you know, can help bring in people that would otherwise be scared of the, oh, this is just crypto, you know? So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that aspect of it up. When I talked about this earlier in the week, and I almost forgot about it. It's great marketing for it's great marketing for Bitcoin. They're going to give Bitcoin free advertisements to their how many users they have, 300 million or something like that.
Yes, 300 million.
Yeah, well, hopefully it really happens. I mean, I will believe it when I see it. Okay, we've heard all these rumors. You know, Andy, you just brought up Australia post office with you can buy the Bitcoin everywhere. It seems like every year we hear something about Australia where you can buy Bitcoin everywhere. When I was in Australia, I didn't see a darn thing that had anything to do with Bitcoin. It's just weird what we hear and, you know, and what actually happens. Now, Mauricio.
To that end, Adam, you know where else you can buy Bitcoin? And I did it myself. It's not cheap, but you can do it. You know those Coinstar machines in pretty much every supermarket?
Yeah.
I mean, you'll pay a premium, but, you know, every single supermarket is a Coinstar now. This is the United States. I don't know if they're in Canada and other countries, but I mean, once it's easy to do, people are just going to do it.
Yeah, they made a big announcement about that when they opened it up in California. I remember. I forgot when this. I think they've been doing it since 2019.
Yeah, it's called CoinMe.com, but they're just part of the Coinstar.
Yeah. All right. Let's. And Andy, your mic is a little low. I think you might want to turn it up. Now, Mauricio, your take up in Canada with this PayPal news.
Yeah, I think very similar to the previous comments. I think this is a big nod to Bitcoin. I think this is great marketing to Bitcoin. I think this is another step towards the mainstream. And I think from the viewpoint of these platforms, Bitcoiners have somewhat of carved our own demographic as far as a target group. And we're associated right now with affluence and technology and being tech savvy and futuristic. So naturally, PayPal is not really the only company trying to cater to us. If you see Land Rover actually just made another nod in their recent advertisement, which made waves too. But these types of nods that we keep seeing from the mainstream, I think are just going to keep increasing. And we're going to see more and more, call it mainstream brands or mainstream finance, try to get cozy with Bitcoiners, just because not only is it an exciting growth opportunity, but it's also very much on trend with what everybody else is seeing. Like everyone else is seeing the money printing. And Bitcoin has a very, very successful anti-printing campaign or anti-printing brand. And people are trying to cozy up to it. And very much to the earlier comments, that if there's a profit to be made, they'll be knocking on the door.
All right. Pound that like button, everybody. Now, before we move, does anyone else have anything to say about PayPal before we move to Venezuela, which will be an interesting topic, no doubt?
Only that with each successive day, there's something. I mean, what sector, what asset class do you see such huge announcements, whether it's Paul Tudor Jones or PayPal? It's almost like every month you're going to see some other big institution join on, and the higher the price goes, there's never been anything more exciting in the history of finance.
Hey, yeah, man, I'm happy to be in this space. You never know what you're going to get, the news that's coming in. It's always a big announcement. It seems like, yeah. So it is the most exciting space out there. Well, unless you consider, traditional finance where they're printing trillions. I mean, that's exciting for some people. I mean, it depends what you consider exciting. All right, I like innovation, not just money printer. That they've had that for hundreds of years. All right. Let's talk about a country that knows about printing money and the money printer, Venezuela, and that is Mauricio. You're originally from there. You're Canadian now, and you know what's going on down there. Let's read this headline: Venezuela tests Bitcoin payments for some passports. Unable to process payments via credit card, Venezuela appears to be testing Bitcoin as a viable payment option for passports and other state documents. It does appear this is actually true. What's your take on it?
So it's very timely, actually, for me to be here because I just renewed my passport a couple of years ago. And so I just want to lay some groundwork here, just so that people understand. The Venezuelan regime long ago stopped caring about anybody who left. They pretty much catered to us because they had to, on almost a humanitarian rights or premise, and also to save face on these countries where they had so-called embassies. The service, I mean, I don't even know how to begin to describe it. It took me 18 months to renew my passport. And they never accepted credit cards. They always needed money orders or certified checks. So that's complete bleep. So to me, it's a hard pill to swallow. It's a hard pill to swallow because I know that Bitcoin's premise is not to discriminate, but it's the equivalent of the person who just entered your house and essentially robbed it and beat up your family and took everything you had, saying that it's now taking Bitcoin for people to go and make donations and take visits. So currently, like I said, it's a very hard pill to swallow, but I hope that in the future, I can use that same attribute to send funds to a rightful cause that is fighting for something that I believe is right. In the meantime, I get very frustrated when people try to elevate a criminal and put him up on a pedestal just because it goes in alliance with their trending political views. So I'll just maybe pause there.
All right. Gabriel, your take in Chile.
I'll completely agree with that perspective. I mean, it's very tempting for us in these early days to just cheerlead everything that uses Bitcoin, but I mean, that's probably not the right way to go if we want long-term, reputation established here. But I mean, in Chile here, there's not really any Bitcoin news to speak of because, as you may have heard, everyone's been a little bit preoccupied with other matters over the past year. There have been quote-unquote peaceful protests that broke out, was it like last September or something like that? And it escalated very, very quickly. It went from crickets one day to we're being literally invaded on our property by terrorists the next week. No, actually just two days later, actually. So, I mean, we had to get our heads screwed on properly very quickly and adapt to things very quickly. Things have calmed down a little bit. The computer virus has kind of forced people to get off the streets. And so there was kind of a silver lining there in that regard. At least it kind of caused things to calm down. And then for some crazy reason, I guess people in the US decided that what the Chileans were up to looked pretty fun, and they decided to copy it. And so we've got kind of the exact same thing playing out. It's like I'm watching reruns whenever I turn on the news now. It's like everything that happened in Chile is just playing out in the streets of the US.
Yeah, it's important that people, I mean, I love when we have South American shows like this. You talk about a dictator using Bitcoin, and you talk about what's going on in Chile. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now we're going to get back to that Chile stuff in a second, because I want to get Andy's take on the what Venezuela is doing. And do you see? And I think other countries, although again the guy in charge of Venezuela, no good. Do you think other countries will follow him?
Well, yes, and I mean this is probably, to me, even though it's kind of a small scale thing they're talking about, is a bigger story to me than even PayPal when you look at the macro implications. I mean, I'm looking at an article I wrote, back in October of 2017 called "Bitcoin Will Make or Break Governments," and basically it was saying that as the world gets worse, and of course this was not in a virus world, this was in a seemingly okay world, that eventually that all the countries who have seen their currencies destroyed by A, bad policy, and B, US dollar hegemony, would realize when they saw what Bitcoin was that they had a chance to emerge as something stronger and potentially something very strong. Because right now it's almost impossible to get out of the bottom tier of nations, let alone a country like Venezuela, which is just in such terrible condition politically, socially, and financially. And now when you listen to Max Kaiser constantly talk about the Bitcoin hash war that he's anticipating, and he's talking about Venezuela and Iran, it's exactly the kind of thing that I was thinking. Eventually, countries are going to do everything they can to get Bitcoin. Now, if the Venezuelan government is accepting Bitcoin for anything like a passport, obviously they understand its value. So don't be surprised if they are doing other things like mining Bitcoin and potentially buying Bitcoin, because ultimately, in some of these cases, it's going to be their only chance at survival. And back when I was writing that, I remember I was talking about Belarus because Belarus had done something with Bitcoin, the Vanuatu Islands also. But I really spent a lot of time then talking about Japan, because not only is Japan very receptive to Bitcoin and very smart financially, but they also have the world's worst demographics and highest debt to GDP ratio. So I do believe that there are going to be a lot of countries that realize the potential salvation of Bitcoin. And yeah, there may be a hash war in the very near term, especially as this global economy and financial system rapidly is destroyed.
I want to go back to Mauricio. Is this going to save? Is this going to prolong the regime?
I don't think people are not to speak poorly of, but I guess I'll speak to what it does for us. A Venezuelan passport is hardly an asset these days. So there's not too many people rushing through the door. This is a gimmick. To the earlier point, they have notoriously been trying any which way they can to get Bitcoin. They're overpaying for your Bitcoin remittances with printed cash. They're flooding the P2P markets, again, overpaying in the P2P markets just to get the Bitcoin. They are mining. They took some of mine, so I can tell you for sure. They've done everything they can to circumvent some of the restrictions that some people have tried to put on them, because you can't just go into a criminal's backyard and fight with it. There's very little political will to do that. So the weapons that are there today are essentially just restrictions and choke points, so that it becomes unbearable, and so that they actually choose to listen to their people. When they have enough of a grip on a totalitarian basis, you see it in Cuba, you see it in Iran, you see it in Venezuela, there is no democracy. There's just no option for democracy. Anybody that fights for an option for democracy ends up dead, not even in jail. So it's a failed state by all accounts. And of course, failed states will do what failed states do. They will try to run amok. They will try to stay on the run. I think eventually it'll catch up. I'm not sure. Sometimes I look at Cuba and I think, wow, you may actually get cursed forever. And I hope that's not the case. But I certainly, I definitely think this helps. That's why, in a way, I mentioned earlier that it's frustrating because it does get them hard money, one way or another, and that does help them. So as much as I don't like them, that this does help them, and as much as I love Bitcoin, this is one of the beautiful things about it that sometimes it's hard to swallow.
Yeah, and definitely them getting this trickle of money this way, it shows that Bitcoin is unconfiscatable and uncensorable, because with all the sanctions against Venezuela, if there was a way to stop the Bitcoin getting into there,
even the best criminal, even the top criminal, even the most ruthless, the worst person that is factually violating human rights, they'll be able to get Bitcoin. That's
Well, consider this. Look, governments, even the Venezuelan government, certainly the U.S. and Japanese government, but even the Venezuelan government still has the ability to buy real assets with printed money. The bolivar, I mean, when you can print as many bolivars as you want and it still has some value, the government can go out and find their own ways to buy Bitcoin. So, and there are many other countries that can do it, and there are many other countries whose currency is not as bad as the bolivar. So that's the beauty of this hash war. It can start out, once it starts, you can see a lot of countries coming in at once and realizing that this is an asset of real value that they can spend with printed money that's losing value on. And again, there's not many things that foreign governments can buy that matter. If you're, let's say, the Venezuelan government, you're not going to print money to buy the U.S. stock market or treasury bonds, even gold, which especially they're having such trouble moving it, or any government to have gold in any real size. It's almost impossible to move it around and store it or even find it. So yeah, Bitcoin is going to be bought by governments with, and I don't care where the source of the money is, the printing press or the dark markets or the PA of the dictator, but it's going to get bought by a lot of different people in a lot of high places.
I wanted to bring up something, Mauricio, a clarification. Is the Venezuelan government using peer-to-peer exchanges to buy Bitcoin? I thought you said something like that. Are they going on local? Because everyone talks about local Bitcoins. There's so much Venezuelan activity there. But is it the government that's doing most of that activity?
This isn't the first time I've said this. I said this. I mentioned this to Marty way back when we spoke, and because I firmly believe it. I'm not alone in believing this. Now, mind you, I haven't been able to go back to the country in 3.5 years, so it's very hard to prove this with data, especially when all this stuff is anonymous. But I can tell you that a lot of the people moving Bitcoin around in Venezuela are not Venezuelans reading Andreas Antonopoulos' book or Safe's book and waking up one day and saying, "Oh, I want some monetary freedom." A lot of the Bitcoin being bought and moved around is people that cannot have their name show up on a bank account somewhere or anywhere, and they just need to do it through a different mean. And the other piece too is that because of all these sanctions and because of all the issues that the government has, and the massive drop in oil, they just have no hard money coming in. And nobody is willing to take their bolívares because people there are just not that idiotic anymore. And so the only people that will take their bolívares are there are a few people, and then you say, okay, who are these people that are actually letting go of their Bitcoin? Where does the selling flow come from, right? And that's a very great question. And the reason I say that the P2P market in Venezuela is infiltrated is because if you look at what it costs you to pay for $1 of Bitcoin in the P2P market, so $1 in Bitcoin in Venezuela, it's actually more expensive than $1 many times. And that tells you that there is a disproportionate demand for Bitcoin relative to dollars. Why would that be?
Because it's better.
Yeah. No.
Because it's very hard to source, and it's better. I mean, people are in desperation there, so the price gets jacked up. But better to have the premium Bitcoin than to have the bolivar. Period.
For sure. But and then the people that to basically close that trade up, because you have to think of it at both ends, right? At one end, there's going to be a person that will be willing to print endless amounts of bolívares to get their hands on Bitcoin, right? Now, who would be foolish enough to trade a precious hard asset for a worthless piece of paper? That's a great question as well. The answer to that is somebody that can make a profit on that trade. How does that happen, you ask? Well, I know that if I get your bolívares, your papers, right, that are worth $100 today. So essentially, it's a bridge trade for the dollar. So what happens is you sell the Bitcoin, I sell the Bitcoin to you in the P2P market for 10K when I can rebuy it at 9. So I'll take those bolívares, I'll buy $10,000, I'll send them to my Coinbase account, and I'll buy 1.1 Bitcoins. And I'll come right back and I'll put up another limit order just to wait for you to fill it.
Dude, I got to tell you something here. I mean, everybody loves to talk about local Bitcoins, and they like, oh, the Venezuelan people are getting their Bitcoin and everything. what you just you're the only one saying this, and it's great. That's why we have the best guest in the freaking space here. Okay, dudes, what he's saying, no one else is saying. I mean, no one that I know is saying that, at least. Mauricio, do you know anyone else that's talking about that the P2P local Bitcoin market might not be as heavenly as everybody says it is, and helping up and so helpful for the people of Venezuela? It might just be corrupt government officials that are dominating it.
We can talk to a bunch of people that I know follow this subject well. One of them being Javier. I think he's been here with me actually in the past. Javier Bastardo. So I've talked about this with him in the past. Ale Machado, so Alejandro Machado probably would be able to tell. I was on Peter's show with him. I believe we talked about this. Matt Arberg, actually, Useful Tulips. He follows P2P markets very closely.
But he's the one that's Matt saying, he paints it. Well, maybe I'm misinterpreting it. I mean, whenever I see his graphs, he's saying how good it, how this is a great thing.
No, because it's. I mean, again, it's not all bad people. Like there is real people looking to get hard money, but there's, because the market is anonymous, there's just ways to game the numbers. Like it's very hard to tell what number, like what volume is for what. So I couldn't sit here and tell you, hey, Adam, 100% of all the volume is these people doing this, or it's 10% or it's 5%. I know there is a volume, and if I had to bet, I bet you it would be significant. But can I know with certainty what that volume is? I can't. But I know because of how these people operate and the things they're willing to do, and just how they are, like the kind of scrupulous or unscrupulous people they are, and clever and very smart. It just makes complete sense.
Yeah, it does. It really does. I'm glad you brought this up here. I'm really I hadn't really thought about it in that way yet. So, all right, does anyone else have anything to say about this Venezuela? Anyone else before we move on to the next subject at hand? All right. And I want to, Mauricio, you at your company, Ledin, you've got this stablecoin thing going on, or US dollar coin. I forgot what it is. I mean, and you're offering people a high rate of return if they store their value in with you guys. Now, I don't. I love Bitcoin. Now we got to get to the base layer here. Do you do this for? I mean, it helps out people in foreign countries, right? This is why would someone want to do that?
What is the service? Can you explain it?
Yeah. So so we offer Bitcoin savings accounts and USDC savings accounts. So we allow people to earn interest on their Bitcoin holdings or on their USDC holdings. Our first account was a Bitcoin account, our Bitcoin savings account. But shortly after that, we launched our USDC savings account. And that came we launched that account for a couple of reasons. A lot of our clients in Latin America, when they get their hands on some hard money, they fight really hard for those savings. We have clients that have a couple $100 of Bitcoin with us, and they slowly over time keep adding and they keep building the position. When Bitcoin starts moving around, if your life savings go from 500 to 400, that's a big hit, and they can go even lower than that. So a lot of people, although they love the versatility and the autonomy of having their own Bitcoin, they don't always love the volatility. And for a lot of people in LATAM, a lot of times they want to have digital dollars. So when you're in Latin America and you receive your payment at the end of the month, not everybody has the option of buying dollars and sending them to a US bank account where they can earn interest or pay down their credit card or access all these other financial services or access loans. Most people can just get cash. And that cash can do nothing. And actually, it's a huge liability if you get pulled over or if your house gets broken into. So there's a big demand for being able to store these digital dollars and access these services. And so a question we kept getting over and over was, when can we get your savings account in the digital dollar form? Like, we would really love to use a product where we could slowly over time save Bitcoin and also dollars. And so we said, okay, we could definitely do that because we lend dollars to people that don't want to sell the Bitcoin, right? And so essentially the way the model works is we announced a partnership with Genesis, which obviously enables us to have a great institution behind us and have them as their sort of primary borrower for all of our savings accounts, which is phenomenal. But the way the product works in a nutshell, just to show people how we're able to pay these rates, is when we lend dollars to people that don't want to sell their Bitcoin, we lend out those dollars out at 14%. When people put a USDC in our savings account, we pay them 8.8%. So we have enough of a margin to take a spread and pay both people. And even at 14%, our Bitcoin-backed loans and even our B2X loans to buy more Bitcoin are the cheapest in the market as far as like using loans to buy more digital assets. So even at those rates, we're still able to offer a great return for both people and still make a healthy margin. So we're not pulling these numbers out of thin air.
All right, this explains.
I'm not sure I get it. Yeah.
Well,
I don't get how something that. Yeah, go.
No, I can see why people would want to store their value in stable coins, but they're freaked out by Bitcoin and they're in a developing. I see the demand for the product now. I understand that. What were you going to say, Andy?
Just that, in a world where dollars right now are yielding zero, how would you be able to get an 8% yield on dollars? And if you were getting a yield on Bitcoin, it would mean Bitcoin to someone else. So, obviously it's risky, whatever that's being invested in, if it's going to be 8% yield. I mean, I'm just very skeptical of lending Bitcoin to anybody, and B, of those yields. I mean, I wouldn't, to me, I think of the US dollar market as 1% at best, and Bitcoin doesn't have a yield unless you consider crypto dividends. So it just, I would not be interested in that.
Just to clarify though, we don't pay 8.8 on Bitcoin. The rate for Bitcoin is 4.1. It's far different for the rate for US dollars. The demand to borrow US dollars to buy more Bitcoin is far higher than the demand to borrow.
But where is the yield? Bitcoin doesn't yield anything. So where is 4%, let alone you're getting more if you have a spread? Where are you getting more than 4% on Bitcoin, which doesn't have a yield?
Yeah, no, the Bitcoin does get lent out. It's not, in order to get the return, it does get lent out. That's why we lend it to Genesis.
Okay. I just don't understand. You can, Genesis could borrow dollars for nothing. So why do they want to borrow Bitcoin for more than 4%? Healthy skepticism. That's all.
No, and that's completely fair, and it's actually welcome because it helps hash out all the questions that everyone else might have. So not everybody. So for example, if you are in the shoes of Kraken or Bitstamp, these crypto companies can't borrow at 0%. It's very, very difficult for them to get traditional financing. And largely what ends up happening is they end up having to place Bitcoin or other type of assets as collateral to get the liquidity. And so I think the real reason why you see such high demand really for dollars is because a lot of the platforms that are providing margin services to clients have a big demand to essentially fuel these trades. They need dollars so they can lend them to their clients, so their clients want to buy more digital assets. So they're willing essentially to pay higher rates than traditional finance would because they just don't have access to that type of lending or that type of borrowing.
All right. Any Gabriel, you have any questions about the product and the thoughts on stable coins, etc.?
Not really. I mean, I definitely get the appeal. I've been considering offering a stablecoin option with the app that I'm building right now too, for that very reason. Just new people in the space, when their friends are warning them about getting involved in Bitcoin, that's always one thing that comes up is, oh, you could be one of those people that just lose everything, and all that kind of stuff. So just keeping the simplicity there is worth something, that peace of mind. But I was curious, are you all based in one location, or are you guys spread out? Or
we're based in Canada, so we're a Canadian company, but
that's a big place.
Yeah, we're in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're Toronto-based, but I'm from Venezuela. A lot of actually over half of our team is also from LATAM. Mm-hmm. So we have a big client base down there. I guess over 60% of our clients are actually in Latin America.
Okay, I was planning to move up to Ontario, probably Ottawa next year, and get some land there and expand a bit. And I'll definitely need a tour guide to introduce me to the crypto scene. So maybe I'll come find you for a beer or something.
Definitely.
All right. In motion here. Connections
Yeah.
been made. Pound that like button. Jim.
Adam, I'd like to add about stable coins in general.
Yeah, I was going to add. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, because look, there's been a lot of, I guess, skepticism when you go back from day one with all the Tether stuff with Bitfinex. But the fact is, stable coins are now here to stay.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just listening to an interview with somebody, I couldn't remember who it was, who's been, very deep into that, working over in Hong Kong forever. And he's saying that this is a huge, huge business in Asia now, Tether alone, let alone stable coins. And, it just makes intuitive sense that there are people in nations who, A, they want the privacy of cryptocurrency, B, they do not want their own currencies. And so it to me is, there's the maximalist side that says, no, stable coins will all collapse. They're just banks everywhere and governments will stop them. But I think you're going to see institutions that house stable coins grow as fast as any banking group has ever grown. It may be the biggest growth segment of banks, period, aside from Bitcoin itself in the coming years. I think it's fantastic. I mean, look at, for instance, Caitlin Long and her Avanti Bank when they get their license. Obviously Wyoming is looking to be the Malta of the United States, and Malta is the Malta of Europe. And there's going to be other places like that are going to find ways to safely store stablecoins. And I think stablecoins are an amazing thing. I don't have any need for them in my life, but I expect it to be an enormous growth industry. And guess what? If you have stablecoins like USDC and Tether, guess what the next step is? You buy Bitcoin with them.
Hopefully.
And I think that's beautifully said. That's just, I could not agree more with what you just said. And just to say, like, one of the things that I became most excited about when we first launched this business, when we did Bitcoin backed loans, was that for the first time ever, somebody in Colombia had the same collateral and could get the same terms and the same funding and the same treatment that someone in Canada. Because a Bitcoin in Canada is a Bitcoin anywhere, and we were able to not discriminate, essentially, regardless of where you were, but assuming we could service the jurisdiction you were in. That basically enabled us to standardize the service. With stable coins, you're really leveling the playing field because you're bringing down the learning curve exponentially. When you try to explain to somebody what DAI is, it becomes more difficult because it doesn't have a USD on it. But the second you put USD and a letter or USD and a this, and you make it very simple to send and receive, people get it really, really quickly. So I think it's a way that it allows companies like us an ability to provide the same service to a Canadian than to a Colombian.
And Andy, you gave 2 points why stablecoins were awesome, and why you liked them. But the third one is what he just. I mean, they're the dollar, so everyone is used to the dollar already. So it gets rid of the learning curve. People are very comfortable with them because they value the whole darn world values their wealth in dollars, and it helps boost up the dollar even more. I mean, it supports the dollar even more, which some people might not like. But
well, if you're like that Lebanese journalist you're talking about, who hasn't figured out Bitcoin yet, and look, a lot of people haven't. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people like her who still value their worth in fiat currency, but they realize that they're in nations, which are most of them, where the currencies are going to fall against the dollar. It doesn't matter whether you believe the dollar is going to, quote, collapse or not. We all know the dollar's purchasing power is going down over time, certainly against Bitcoin, but it's not going to collapse against the lesser, the third world nations. So there's going to be a need for stable coins, and it's going to be a big business.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the dollar and a quote of yours here, Andy. Only 2 scenarios are possible. 1, infinite QE yields financial asset hyperinflation, or 2, it fails to support financial assets and money printing goes parabolic. Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, I mean, because we talked about in the last show we were at, the whole thing with the Bitcoin be correlated to financial markets, and we all know who've been in Bitcoin a long time that it's not. I mean, there's a reason why it's talked about as an uncorrelated asset. The only time it's ever really been correlated in any measure has been in the post-virus world of a couple of months. And that doesn't mean it's because it's changed to that. It's just that right now markets are in flux. You still have obviously a lack of education, but this is a short-term thing. The fact is that Bitcoin is going to benefit from this situation more than any other asset. And the whole point about when people talk about the correlation, oh no, the market's going to crash, the stock market, so Bitcoin will go with it. And I sit there and go, you're kidding me, right? Does anyone, including Peter Schiff, who calls Bitcoin the ultimate risk asset, really believe that Bitcoin is a economically sensitive stock or an industry or a company that is worried about the economy getting weaker? It's a tiny little small market cap asset class which represents real money. And if the government is in fact able to hyperinflate assets, which is what they're trying to do, and I assure you they will try further, and let alone if we have a new administration of socialists, they will do everything they can to pump up the price of the stock and bond markets. And if they do, great, it'll mean inflation of all financial assets and Bitcoin will go up more. Now, if they actually fail, and let's say we have another crash now like we had in March, and they can't rescue the markets with money printing, well, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to double, triple, quadruple. They are literally going to print the money into oblivion in the space of weeks and months' time and destroy everything that there is on Earth financially. So there's no fear in me about what the stock market is going to do regarding this economic environment, which is only going to get far worse.
Ooh, God, pound that like button, people. Yeah, it's classic Andy Hoffman. By the way, Gregor Kovacs sent $9.99. Thank you. He says Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, dude. Oh man, you're down with it. All right, Gabriel, your take on Bitcoin, its correlation to the stock market, and is the stock market overvalued? How about money printing? We covered a lot just there, so I'm sure you have some ideas to share.
Yeah, I just try to keep kind of a big picture perspective. It's always tempting to get sucked in and start playing the game, but I've tried to make a conscious effort not to. I use Bitcoin all the time. It's very useful to me in selling real estate to international customers and such, but I don't buy coins and speculate on them and that sort of thing. I think in the big picture, yes, of course, it's going to outperform all the fiat currencies that you could possibly name. But that's just a big picture trend. I don't put dates on anything. I don't try to tell you when to buy and when to sell or anything like that.
But how do you personally combat money printing? Because I mean, where every country, I mean,
you don't.
How do you store? How do you save? Oh, you don't.
No.
I mean, you have real estate.
I'm not a saving type. I think you should always be investing in actual business activity. You should always be building things. You should always be, thinking along those lines instead of just trying to protect your currency somehow.
All right.
Yeah, but what if the business environment is in a full-scale collapse? Because that is what is happening right now. It's not an overstatement. Yep. Sometimes it's safe for sure. Cash, but sometimes the cash isn't safe either.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've had to essentially suspend operations here and wait for the country to reopen. It's all in lockdown right now. So, I mean, our cash really isn't doing us any good because we can't spend it. So,
I mean, think about the situation the world is in right now because of all these years of QE and that have taken interest rates down to essentially zero and all the debts that's been accumulated. The only way that this can keep going is if debt can continually be issued by everyone, from governments to municipalities, corporations, individuals, at an exponentially higher rate. And the only way that even has a chance at happening is if interest rates stay at zero or negative or whatever you want.
Negative, yeah.
And the only way that can happen is with money printing. And of course, if the stock market goes down and all that wealth, we're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of wealth, has to be protected. If that goes away, then there's going to be more money printing. So again, right now, to me, the primary goal of anyone should be to realize the ramifications of what's about to happen. What we just got the last 3 months is the typical, government comes in like in 2008 or 2002, prints a lot of money and pumps up the markets. But, this is not a one-time event. This is an expanding economic collapse. It's going to get far worse. We talked about it in March, talking about it now. Things are much worse now. And we were talking about today. Now they're shutting down all the bars and restaurants in states again. I mean, we won't be able to survive this. And the only ramification, the only recourse that you're going to see from governments is printing more and more money. So protecting money now, to me, protecting wealth is going to be paramount.
Yeah, and we're about to start actually feeling the pinch because until now, the printing has gone on, but credit ratings haven't been affected yet. But right now, we're starting to hear that in Canada, they've enjoyed a AAA credit rating for so long now. And now it's like, okay, well, now your household debt is 200% of GDP. So how long do you think you're going to keep that credit rating?
Yeah, everything's been on pause. The credit ratings have been like, we'll just wait a few months. Everything will be fine. A lot of the businesses have been holding out as long as they can. You have the insurance and the payments that they're like, that'll be good. But guess what? That's going to end now. We have a new administration that's probably going to come into America that's going to be pure socialist. So any kind of this hope like, yeah, everything is fine, we just needed to wait, that's going to be dashed very quickly. All that debt has to be paid back one way or the other. And most likely it's going to be paid with inflation.
Okay, I want to hear Mauricio, your take on money printing, stock market, anything.
So I'll mention a funny anecdote that I say often, or I say to some of my friends. Maybe you already heard it, but I did better shorting the Bolivar than long Bitcoin, like financially so far. And people ask, how do you do that? How do you short the Bolivar, right? And in a roundabout way, and this is not in any way trying to show this, but in a roundabout way, that's kind of how I ended up at the lettered model, because how you short the Bolivar is you take a dollar or a Bolivar loan by an entity, a Venezuelan bank that had a mandate to issue these loans. And the loans, eventually, because the government needs to save face, the loan rates have to get priced below inflation. And so what ends up happening is that you end up borrowing at this ridiculous artificial rate, and you buy hard assets. So I would buy dollars with my loans. And I would just wait for inflation to do its thing. And in a few months, I would just convert back a fraction of the loan, pay back my full loan in full, and I would do it all over again. So this idea of not only the concept of not selling your Bitcoin, to me, became very important. Not ever selling your Bitcoin. If I needed to sell my Bitcoin, I would instead take a loan because the loans would always be easier to pay back. And so what ended up happening was that I became very, very emphatic about facilitating this model. And it really started out because I was feeling so much pain selling my Bitcoin when I had to go buy my mining equipment. And I didn't really like the token models and the other things that other lenders were doing. So we decided to do this as a Canadian transparent operation and let people place their Bitcoin as collateral or borrow. So I guess to the earlier point, buy Bitcoin. And I guess to close it off, don't sell it.
And by the way, that is absolutely a brilliant thing you did. But I'm guessing that window of arbitrage to do that will close very quickly.
The loans getting short-term, and the rates go higher and higher. So it ebbs and flows. Yeah.
All right. Let's move to another subject here. Let's see what else we have here. We talked about Venezuela. Oh, yes. I don't know if anyone's got takes on this, but I'll start with Mauricio. The DeFi stuff, it's getting frothy, it seems like. I'm not going to mention all the DeFi products that people are pumping up now, but I mean, this last week, it seems like a lot of money has been flowing into, I don't even know what this stuff even does. Have you noticed it? Are we about to hit, is this the tip of the ICO Part 2 iceberg?
Oh, man. So, listen, my concern around this is that I feel like there's too many people rushing into it with too little understanding of what this is and what this does. And I think that there is no such thing as a free lunch. So you should always try to understand where things are coming from before you just go in and eat that free lunch, what you think might be a free lunch, because you're probably going to get wrecked. So I think people need to understand what they're doing better. I think most people that are participating in this, probably don't know what they're doing well enough. And I don't think that it's very hard to sustain models where you have a high level of incentives, and that these incentives tend to distort the actual economic activity that actually needs to happen. So I think there's just a lot of noise and a lot of marketing going around. But I'd love for the dust to settle and see what if any actually ends up producing value and helping people out, and what if not, when what ends up being just a passing gimmick.
Gabriel, have you heard about this DeFi madness? Has it hit you?
I'm not up to speed. No.
Good. That's what the Indian guy who owns part of the Golden State Warriors. He got asked about DeFi. He's like, "What's that?" But he definitely knew what Bitcoin is. All right, Andy, are we about to experience a new ICO type of madness?
Well, it's only I listen to podcasts and people are talking about how some of them have gone wild. I don't even know which ones they are. I mean, at this point, we have on CoinMarketCap, we have 6,000 or so coins, and there's going to be many more. And look, I think, and more than anyone, there's no way that the stupidity of the space is going to go away anytime soon. I mean, the fact that some of the top 10 are still, like, I just keep looking at, for instance, like Bcash and BSV with the $3 billion market caps. So I'm going, I don't understand. I can't believe after all these years that people actually buy these things at all. So if
BSV it's unbelievable. BSV.
I mean, unbelievable. I can't put around with, especially with Craig Wright and all his law cases and lying.
Autistic, he says he is. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And it has a $3 billion market cap. So the point is, are people going to speculate on stuff? I mean, yeah, look, we just had a super, super frothy stock market top. In fact, if you look at a chart, someone just put it up of the NASDAQ, because I barely follow stocks anymore. And you look at the NASDAQ chart, the bubble we've just had, like the chart looks crazier than what it looked like in the dot-com era. And look at the Robinhood, the craziness, and the Hertz. I mean, absolutely crazy stuff. So yeah, it makes sense to me that at this frothy period of markets that we've seen insanity in crypto. Of course, we haven't seen it in Bitcoin, which is what's so ironic. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of stupid people doing a lot of dumb things. And as for DeFi in general, I mean, look, I have an open mind about stuff, but I just don't get it. I mean, I've seen the horror stories already in actual DeFi, like Maker, and it comes down to centralization. I don't think it's possible to have a decentralized finance. Someone's got to hold the money. And yes. So to me, the whole DeFi thing is absolutely ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous that people speculate on stupid things.
Yeah, this is where the big boys play. And you're free to invest in anything insane that you want to. If a guy says he's autistic and he created a coin and there's some tulip trust and you want to give him money, then hey, no one can stop you. That's the wild, wild west we're in here. You're going to learn the hard way. Oh yes, Mauricio.
I just have a question in case somebody knows this better than I do, because I don't know this well enough, but I've heard enough news going around, and I'd just love to hear if anyone here thinks there's any validity to this. But on the topic that you were making just now about frothy markets and why Bitcoin's perhaps not partaking, I've heard a lot about the selling pressure that might be coming from these scams, that these plush token scams that have just massive amounts of Bitcoin that they've been selling on schedule over the last months. And that might be a reason why we've been basically held back from the party. I'd love to hear if anyone knows anything about that. That might be.
I think that was a reason. I don't know if that's going to continue. I think with Ethereum is about to feel that. There's some Ethereum that they just moved, the scammers moved, that they're going to dump. So Ethereum might feel that soon. But I think Bitcoin did play somewhat of a role. Yeah, but I don't know if it will continue. I think they might have got rid of it all by now.
It played a huge role, but the thing is, it's all gone. If there's, I mean, the numbers were there of how much Bitcoin there was, and there was some big drops in the fall related to it. I mean, there could be a tiny bit left, but essentially, it's common knowledge that it's all gone, but not the Ether. And a nice chunk was moved the other day. And yeah, I mean, if someone dumps one, they dump them all. I mean, if someone sold it, then it would probably take the whole sector. But I'm not worried about Plus Token. I think that's old news. I think you just have a lot of consolidation here. You do have a lot of financial markets that are betting on, quote, reflation trades. They're scared of everything. So if stocks go up, then they buy Bitcoin. If they go down, they sell Bitcoin. But it's a temporary correlation that'll go away. And but Plus Token, I don't think is an issue anymore.
We were just talking about, you mentioned when we were talking about DeFi, how it's not really decentralized, it's centralized. Let's talk about something else that's centralized and relates to a previous topic. Fed coins. And I want to ask Mauricio about this, because Mauricio, obviously you're a huge fan of stable coins. Canada is hiring people to create a Fed coin. They're going to end up with a Fed coin in Canada, and the United States will eventually too. What's your take on that? Given your perspective on stable coins.
I think I think that the governments are absolutely interested because for many reasons. One of the things that I find the trickiest thing around how you would execute this is if you create the Canadian, or the US dollar coin issued by the Federal Reserve, what becomes your native wallet? Is it a Fed wallet? And are you going to be banking with the Fed?
Yep.
Because if you do that, you kill private banking.
Yes.
And so you can't do that, right? Like, short of you trying to, completely nuke yourself as a country,
but
you won't be able to do that.
Country, you saw Venezuela go communist. So, I mean, you're saying it's the road to communism. I mean, it's the road to socialism, right?
Well, yeah, but in a way, yes, they could destroy their own banking system. If they hated their own banking system like they do in Venezuela, then for sure, that would be an absolutely brilliant way to completely destroy them entirely. In a real economy where it's not a failed state just yet, I think citizens and even institutions should stand up and say, "Have you thought this through?" This is actually going to hit a massive reset on all. I think perhaps someone should try it first before we go out and try to decimate our own banking infrastructure. Because as far as I understand it, the U.S. financial system is the biggest moat there is in the planet. So anything that may present a risk to that, I think needs to be very, very well thought out. So that's the tricky thing with me about the coins. It's like, how do you create this central coin issued by this central entity? And not get people tempted to deal directly with the owner of the circus, like we say, right? And essentially cream everyone else underneath.
Andy, you were going to say.
Yes. This would be an admission of failure as a state. So it's not something to be taken lightly. I mean, for one, look, because the digital dollar, right now, all nations are, quote, digital, but what that would really mean would be, one, you'd be taking cash out of circulation. B, you'd be monitoring all transactions. And C, you'd probably become, you'd probably be eliminating your central bank and becoming the central bank. And like Mauricio says, you'd probably be eliminating your banks too. Because, look, the negative interest rates, I mean, you could set negative interest rates for the whole country. That makes negative interest rates work. It takes away privacy. It gives governments all they need to do. But like you said, you destroy society in doing it. So I don't think that, I think right now, like, for instance, the government of Canada hiring consultants, they're really talking more about the cashless society thing, which is bad enough itself. But ultimately, once they get that power, because you will have a USD treasury wallet, once they get that, it's just, the slippery road down to taking over all other banking activities and fostering and instilling your will on the nation, like, for instance, negative interest rates and the monitoring of all transactions.
Well, I think the desire for negative interest rates will become so high that this will become a reality. Now, will it? Maybe they'll partner up with the private banks in some way to preserve them. I mean, there's different ways you can.
I mean, look, the fact is, Adam, negative interest rates is going to be that's hyperinflation right there. You can't. There's no such thing as negative interest rates. The fact that we see it right now and it's being experimented in a lot of market manipulation to like keep the veneer. But if you're going to move to a world where rates are actually negative, you're going to have hyperinflation and societal collapse. It can't be done. So we're just in the beginning stages of trying it. But like I said, with all the debt exponentially growing, rates have already been negative, for several years for the banks. But now we're starting to see, I see Deutsche Bank just installed it for clients, wealthy clients in Europe. And ultimately, it's going to happen, to more and more real world applications. And what are people going to do? They're going to flee the currencies. And where are they going to go? They're going to go to Bitcoin.
All right. Gabriel, do you have any thoughts on the Fed coins, countries doing this, having their own cryptocurrencies?
I agree with everything that's been said so far. I always try to find a silver lining in things, and I guess it might help in selling cryptos as a whole to people and getting them comfortable.
Yes, yeah.
So maybe the government will give people their first taste of cryptos, and then they'll go, "Oh, this isn't so bad," and then they'll go buy some Bitcoin.
That is the silver lining.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, who's going to be the first entity to accept U.S. or Canadian Fed coin for Bitcoin? And
yeah.
I think the Bitcoin organizations that the Bitcoin entities that follow all the the New York law and all that, they'll be the ones that they'll do whatever the government tells them.
Maybe it'll be PayPal.
They'll be very compliant.
Well, yes, and the prices will be very, very high. It's kind of like the trying to buy Bitcoin in Venezuela. If you want to actually try to return this horrible, disgusting concoction for Bitcoin, the price will have to be exponentially higher.
All right, I want to go back to Gabriel. When at the beginning of the show, you started to talk about the situation in Chile. We're on everybody's conclusionary thoughts here now. I think we've covered everything, but I just want to point out to everyone that in the end of last year, 2019, in Santiago, it was pretty crazy on the streets. And I contacted Gabriel to see if everything was all right. These people in Santiago, I was there in 2018 where I met Gabriel in person, actually. And it is a beautiful city, a wealthy city, the wealthiest country in South America. Yet these spoiled college kids, I guess, maybe they don't realize they're spoiled. They got the sickle hammer signs out there on their college. And it over the year between 2018 and 2019, they took it to the next level. And they're having communist revolutions, parades on the streets of Santiago. And this is the most capitalistic country in South America. And these people are demanding serious communism, socialism. And to me, it was big news. And then 2020 started and everybody forgot about it because of what has happened. Now we're in the United States. We don't have people calling outright for Marxism. Some have, I guess. But it really resembles what was going on down there. And so Santiago is shut down because of the virus, correct?
Yeah.
So you said before, at least, so there's no communist marches anymore, correct?
Not marches, no.
Okay. But is the sentiment still there? Do you see
yeah.
Chile going down the tube, which, and the leaders were giving in to these people, from what I recall.
This is why I say that what's happening in the U.S. looks like an exact copy, because the response is even basically the same. I mean, Chile was quicker to rush into martial law sort of measures. We haven't quite seen that in the U.S. yet, but Piñera, he didn't know what to do. He was completely impotent. He had a huge opportunity, just like Trump did, to, show his strength to his base and clamp down and put on a big show and stuff, but he didn't. He just kind of tried to sit back and wait and hope it all sorted itself out, but of course it didn't. It just got worse and worse. So he just said, okay, let the military take over, and we're still in that state right now where the military is in charge and everything's just, they're trying to keep a lid on things. And so it seems like the government doesn't have either the will or the ability to handle either situation, whether it's peaceful protests or some kind of a virus, because both situations were both responded to very poorly, and they clearly have no plan to improve either. They're just waiting for everything to sort itself out.
Is there any defiance by the Chilean people against the lockdown orders? Or are they just accepting it? They're totally compliant. Unbelievable.
They're very good livestock here. They've been well trained.
The sheep. All right,
that's the same here.
No, but it's not the same. Here, people are the armed guys going to the state house in Michigan. I mean, people having pool party. The United States, from what I've seen, the people of the United States are the most defiant against this. It's sure there's a lot of screaming Karens out there, but the people of the United States are the most defiant of the people of the world. Compare, to the situation.
If we are the most defiant, then that's pretty sad for the state of the world, because we are hardly defiant.
Yeah, it is. It is a sad state of the world. You're absolutely right. But this is it's just like the dollar is the best of all the fiat currencies. Fiat currencies are terrible, but there's the best one. But I wanted to ask Mauricio. Mauricio, something that happened in Venezuela. There's a tweet by some young lady out there just saying to the Americans, the first thing they did, some of the things they did in Venezuela, they tore down all the monuments. They wanted all the history erased. And so it was easy to usher in a new era. What do you think about all these protests on the streets of America? And they've been in Canada also that are calling for new regimes, just a new way of looking at a completely tear down of the system. What do you think about this?
I guess my 2 cents is, there obviously there have been some ugly events that have happened, yes. Right? And I think what ended up happening was that we sent the entire world into this lockdown with very little instructions. Pressure kept mounting. It doesn't matter if you can, give somebody a subsidy or whatnot just so they can get by, but just cooping someone in and removing them from everything that's natural, taking away and constantly feeding you fear every day, death numbers, infections, death numbers, infections, death numbers, infections, restaurants closed, stock market's crashing, everything's crashing. And then all of a sudden you have a very, 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 gory or vivid event that just acts as the spark. And then all of a sudden there's just outrage that just blows up. And then this outrage, you see it in Venezuela, all of a sudden the outrage takes a shape and then it takes some sort of leadership, but then that narrative keeps morphing into different things and they keep finding more reasons to keep doing more things. But at the end of the day, it's just people are just stressed. People are just angry. They want change. They're not happy with the way things are. They'll go to change anything. They almost don't even know what they want to change. They just want change, right? And you saw that in Venezuela, and there are politicians that can be very good at capturing this energy and then corralling it and telling people, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. And they just kind of championing it and take it away. This is what Chavez ended up happening. But I think importantly, governments also have to understand that, and they do, that these things tend to go in waves, right? And so a lot of times they'll sit back and they'll say, is this a real thing? Can we wait until this blows over a bit before we run in and act right away? And sometimes they make the wrong call. Right. So I think there's just been a lot of moving pieces, a lot of flared temperament, a lot of flared emotions, and a lot of people that just want to just let it go, like just let it out. Right. Like let the frustration out for everything that's happened in 2020. And this is just their way of saying it. So I just think we need to be cautious not to go far into either direction or say things that can be very hurtful to one end or the other, because then it's very easy to just keep going tit for tat. So I think it's important to take a step back and think, okay, like what's the real problem about it? Is give people a minute to breathe and see what they're really mad about. Because I think a lot of times people even have a hard time articulating the change they want.
Oh yeah, definitely. Some people have no idea what they want. They're just angry. All right. Let's wait. Your mic is down totally. Your mic's down, Andy.
It is?
Yeah, it's totally off. It's like barely. Pump it up.
Hold on.
All right, but while Andy's fixing his mic, I want to go to Gabriel for his closing words and tell everybody about Fort Galt and any other projects you're working on, anything you want to promote.
Well, Fort Galt is this this thing that sounded like a really weird, extreme idea back when we started it. But now suddenly I don't have to explain it to anyone. It kind of just clicks when I tell them, oh yeah, I went out down to Chile in the middle of the rainforest on the coast, and I'm building this new village with a bunch of friends and stuff. That they're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I wish I was there too. So I guess the marketing aspect of things is a little bit simpler now. The harder part now is like when people actually do want to come and visit, it's harder for them to do so because the country's locked down. So we're just biding our time, kind of sitting pretty and waiting for things to open up again, and then I'm sure things will be flowing nicely. But yeah,
Fort Galt does not lock down. Pound that like button.
No, it doesn't.
Anything else going on? Anything else you want to share?
I'll come and bug you again in a month or two, and I'll have a bunch more to talk about. But
all right, very good to have you back. Everybody enjoys you. All right, let's Andy. Is your mic working out, dude? It's not working. I don't think. Unplug it or use another mic. But we'll go to Mauricio's. Tell us about Ledin and anything you're working on, conclusionary remarks.
So Ledin is Ledin.io. We offer loans and loans if you don't want to sell your Bitcoin, which we know is very important to hold, and loans to buy more Bitcoin if you so choose. And you can also earn interest on your Bitcoin and earn interest on your USDC. Ledin.io, and I'm Cryptonomista on Twitter. If you guys have any questions or comments about LATAM or any of the products we offer, feel free to reach out.
Testing.
All right, these dudes are all linked to below, including Andy Hoffman. Always check out the links below, people. You learn more about what we were talking about in the show. All right, Andy, I heard you say testing there. Pump it up some more. Say something, Andy.
Or just get your mouth right up there and give your...
Yeah. Andy, can you hear us even? I think we're gonna have to conclude here. No, you don't. Oh, wait. Say something. We heard you. We heard you. Yes, say it.
There we go.
There we go.
You can hear me?
Yes.
I cannot hear you. I'll give my comments. Okay. And again, I can't hear any of you, but I'll just say my comments here. The last thing I wanted to say was just to add to what we were talking about before about socialism. I mean, it's too late for people to say nice things. People are desperate for money. Governments are desperate for money. And right now, the U.S. populace, just like everyone else, will vote someone out just because they're unhappy. Now they'll vote someone out because they're more unhappy and in greater financial straits than they've ever been before in history. We are going to have a democratic sweep in Congress in just a few months' time. You could see the odds right now. And with that, we're going to go full socialism. We are going to probably have UBI. We're probably going to have even greater amounts of money printing and bigger government. And it's going to be a really scary situation. And we are supposedly the greatest country in the world. So I think people need to realize that the ramifications socially of what's happening now are going to be as big or bigger than even the monetary and financial ones. And it's a sad stage for the world, but you know what? Good things will come out of it, like Bitcoin.
All right, protect yourselves with Bitcoin, everyone. That's it. That's This Week in Bitcoin. Thank you, Andy and Gabriel and Mauricio for being here today. It was a great show. Remember, we're here every single Friday for This Week in Bitcoin. You get a new show every day. Follow me on Twitter at TechBalt, TechBalt. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, Disrupt Meister. Pound that like button, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow on the backup channel. We'll see you next Friday. Well, just keep checking out TechBalt on Twitter. You get all the updates there. And check out the links below. Bye-bye, everybody.